Good morning, all of you. How are you? I hope all of you are fit and fine. In our previous class, we were discussing about the Albert Einstein biography, and who had written his biography. Who knows who was the biographer of Albert Einstein? In our previous class, we have seen that this Albert Einstein biography had been written by Patrick Pringle. Okay. In our previous class, we have seen that Albert Einstein was very much upset in his school because Mr. Brown, who was his history teacher, he had asked the history question when the Prussians had defeated the French at Waterloo, and he was unable to give the correct answer. And after that, we have seen Rector Pringle had shown that how Mr. Brown criticized him, that why he don't remember all these facts. Then we have seen that Einstein had told that facts are always present in the book. Facts are always present in the book. That's why this fact should not be given more importance. That's why these facts should not be given more importance, rather than we should focus on ideas. Means that if we have a new idea, then we can create a new thing. But this fact tells that this thing had already been happened. Means this thing cannot be repeated again, or we can say that these are the repeated thing. Means past thing, we have to only remember the dates, events. And Einstein had also said that he doesn't bother who was the persons, who are the rulers who had defeated and who got the victory, and who had been defeated by whom. Actually, he says that I focus on that why these peoples are killing each other. What is the reason? Means what is the basic? What are the main thing behind this war? Means what is there an idea behind all this killing, or behind all this battle? Means that he focus on ideas. Then his history teacher, Mr. Brown, says that as your per punishment, you have to remain here for an extra period. And why you come to the school? And he knows that, and he knows also, and he had told to Einstein also that I know that that extra period for you doesn't provide you any benefit, because you doesn't care of all these things. That's why extra period is useless thing only, because you doesn't give focus on all this thing. That's why it will be a worthless job, or it will be a worthless task. In spite of that, you have to wait for an extra period as your punishment, because you have not given the correct answer. Then Mr. Brown had asked the question, why you came to the school? Means this is the basic thing. Always teachers, always guardian, and always teachers. Means they always want to know the reason. Here Mr. Brown said that Einstein, why you come to school? If you don't want to learn the fact, if you don't bother about the fact, then why you come to the school? If you have full focus on idea, then you should not come to the school. In spite of that, you should focus on idea, and you should remain at your home. Why you are coming to the school, and why you are disturbing the whole environment of the school? because of you many students have been spoiled because they also started thinking about the idea. Then then what the answer he had given, one quality of that Mr. Albert Einstein is that he gives the answer fluently without any thinking, without any consideration. He fluently says that I don't wish to come to school. Means he doesn't want to come to the school. It is because of their guardian pressure of all this pressure of getting the diploma. He says that I come to school. I don't wish to come to school. Then his teacher became angry. Mr. Brown became angry and he said that call your father and tell him to take you away from this school. Then when he was going back to his, there is a word used when he is going back to his lodging. When he was going back to his lodging. Lodging is a temporary accommodation where you survive for a few days, or few months, or few years. It is a temporary accommodation. Lodging is temporary accommodation. When he was going back to his lodging, he was not very much happy. It was written that going back to his lodgings did not cheer him up. Means when he was going back to his house, always he was happy that he's going back to his house. But today he is not happy. His father had so little money. Now comes the reason why he was not so happy. His father had so little money to spare that Albert had been found a room in one of the poorest quarters of Munich. This was the place where this was the place Munich where Albert Einstein was lodging, where Albert Einstein was temporarily accommodating himself. Okay, it is said that while he was while Miss Albert Einstein, when he was going back to his lodging, going back to his temporary accommodation where he was living, then he was not so much happy. He was not so much happy. Cheer up means he was not so much happy because he thinks of his father who had so little money to spare and to live at the Munich. This is a place where Albert Einstein was lodging with his father. That Albert had been found a room in one of the poorest quarter, and this is the poorest quarter. Means this is not a very good quarter because his father had had few money. That's why he was living at the poorest quarter at Munich. Albert had been found a room in one of the poorest quarter at Munich. He did not mind the bad food and he did not mind, he does not care about the bad food. He did not mind the bad food and lack of comfort, and he doesn't give importance to the bad food or towards or towards the lack of comfort, means lack of comfort, and this bad food doesn't give him any trouble. The reason is that this bad food, this lack of comfort, all this thing doesn't affect him, doesn't provide him discomfort, or even the dirt and spoil. and even the dirt and the squalor. In our previous class, we have discussed this word also, squalor. Squalor. What this word squalor means? Squalor means extremely dirty and unpleasant. Okay. Means extremely dirty and extremely dirty and unpleasant. Okay. Squalor means extremely dirty and unpleasant. Here, the well-known biographer Patrick Engel says that he doesn't give importance to the bad food which he was getting in the poorest quarter of Munich, nor the lack of comfort would affect him, nor the even the dirt and the squalor. And he was not affected by the unpleasant and dirty place. Means this thing doesn't affect him, doesn't provide any type of trouble to Einstein. But he hated the atmosphere of slum violence. But what doesn't like, he doesn't like the slum violence because in slum, what the word slum means, the slum means the people who are very poor and when they are living in a particular area, poorest place, they are known as the slum public, slum area. And when they fight, they quarrel, they give, they speak bad languages, this type of violence. He doesn't like this type of violence, slum violence. It is given a word, a slum violence means violence is that we always see, but he doesn't like the slum violence of Munich. Means the people who are living in the poorest quarter of Munich, their violence, their slum violence, it doesn't like by the Einstein. He said that it doesn't matter me whether I get good food or not. It doesn't matter me whether there is lack of comfort, and it doesn't matter him about the squalor, about the unpleasant or the dirty thing. But he is mostly affected by the slum violence. But he is mostly affected by the violence, the quarrel, the fighting of these slum peoples. He is mostly affected him by this slum violence. His landlady beat her children because he was lodging in the Munich, and because there was only a temporary accommodation. That's why there was a landlady who who had given this who had given her quarters for for lodging. She had she, she had her children, and this lady, his landlady beat her children regularly, and his landlady, the tenant, he sees that the children of landlady were beaten by her mother. Means these are the slum violence. These are the fighting which we always see. He says that his landlady, who was living there, she beat her children regularly. Means these are the bad signs. These are the bad things about this area. That they always quarrel, they beat, fighting is always done. That's why it is said that his landlady beat her children regularly, and every Saturday her husband came drunk and beat her. See, this is the violence. This is the thing which he doesn't like, which Albert Einstein doesn't like. That's why that's why he says that he doesn't give importance to the bad food. He doesn't give importance to the lack of comfort. He doesn't give towards the dirty place and the squalor and the extremely dirty and unpleasant thing. He doesn't give importance. He doesn't give importance, or we can say that, or this doesn't affect him. But he was mostly affected by slum violence. Okay, Patrick Fingers very clearly says that he was mostly affected by the slum violence, because we have seen that his landlady, Miss Einstein landlady, beat her children regularly, Miss oftenly, continuously. She beat her children, and what is the reason? God knows. But every day beating of the children, this thing is also not good. If there is some reason, if that child had done some wrong thing, then you beat. But this doesn't mean that you have to beat regularly. Here, the biographer Patrick Pingle very beautifully says that what is the actual reality of this slum violence. He says that he means Albert Einstein says that his landlady beat her children regularly, and every Saturday she beat her his landlady beat her children regularly, and every Saturday he, the his landlady husband came back on every Saturday with totally drunk, means he's a drunkard. His landlady husband came every Saturday with fully drunk, and what he do? And he beat her wife. Okay, here what we have seen, that his landlady beat her children, and when her husband came back every Saturday with fully drunk, her her husband beat her. Means violence is everywhere. It looks like a chain. She beat her children, and what happens to her? And she was beaten by her husband. Means beating, quarreling, fighting. These are not the good signs of the society. This thing we should avoid. Here he says that these are the sign of the slum violence. That beating without any reason, drinking. What is all these things? These are the bad signs. But at least you have a room of your own, which is more than I can say. But at least you have a room of your own, which is more than I can say, said Yuri when he called round in the evening. Okay. At least you live among civilized human beings, even if they are all poor students, said Albert. Now there is a character whose name is Yuri. There is a character who is a friend of Albert Einstein. His name is Yuri. Okay, Yuri. Now Albert Einstein said that, but at least you have a room of your own, which is more than I can say. Now, because Albert Einstein was lodging in in Munich, which was the poorest quarter. Here he says that, but here Einstein said that at least You have a room of your own, means you are not a tenant, you are not living in a temporary accommodation, you are not living in a lodging. At Albert Einstein said that at least Yuri, you have your own room. At least you have a room of your own, which is more than I can say. And he says that this is the biggest thing which I can say, that you have your own room. Means you can adjust according to yourself. You don't have to depend on the others. At least you have a room of your own, which is more than I can say, said Yuri when he called round in the evening. At least you live among civilized human beings. Albert Einstein said that at least you live among civilized human beings. Means where you are living, they are at least civilized persons, not like our poorest quarter, not like our slum violence is seen there. At least where you are living, they are at least civilized. There doesn't create slum violence, doesn't beat each other like his landlady who beats her children and she was beaten by her husband. This all things, at least this thing is not seen at your room. At least at least you live among civilized human beings, even if they are all poor students, said Albert. Now what? Now let's see what Yuri replied. How Yuri had replied. Yuri replied, they are not all civilized. Now Yuri says that don't be in this misconception that they are all civilized. At least they are not all civilized. Means few peoples are civilized. I agree with this thing, but don't be this much misconception that all of them are civilized. Did you not hear that one of them was killed last week in a duel? And now you says that you have not heard. You have not heard that one of them. Did you not hear that one of them means amongst one of the civilized people, one of them was killed last week in a duel. Duel means duel means fight, fight or battle. Okay. Now Yuri had given a good example, had presented a good example before his friend. He says that Einstein, you are in this misconception that I am living in a civilized society, but you doesn't have heard a few weeks ago that people that one of them means one of the society had been killed in a fight. Means in our society, which we say that it is a civilized society. In this civilized society, also all of them are not civilized. Only few have a good habit. Only few people are civilized. But in spite of that, other peoples are like your society only. Like the slum violence had been seen, because of which last week, one of them had been killed in a fight, in a duel. Duel means in a fight. We want to say that at least in your quarters they only fight. Violence is there, but in our society, they kill each other. Means they are more cruel than your society.